Welcome to section 11.3. We're going to talk about collecting data. There's a lot of vocabulary in this section, so I'm going to have you guys pause the video in a second and go through all of the vocab. That way you're not scrambling to write stuff down as I explain each one of them. So go to page 326 in your student journal and then use the Big Idea website to fill in all of your vocabulary words, and you're going to see that there are a lot of them. If you forgot how to get there, go to Big Ideas, go to Dynamic Classroom, make sure you go back until you get to chapter 11, go to 11.3, and then you'll see objectives and vocabulary in the menu section, and then you can click on each one of the vocabularies. So go ahead and pause the video, do that, and then come back and I'll explain each one to you. All right, welcome back. We're going to go through the sampling techniques first. So we're going to start with random sample. Random sample is a sample in which each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. So an example of this would be a survey of 1,000 randomly selected adults about how many times they brush their teeth per day. Other examples that you could use to get a random sample would be spinning a wheel, drawing names from a hat, or assigning people random numbers. Self-selected sample. This is a sample in which members of a population can volunteer to be in your sample. Self-selected. So an example would be you want to determine whether students in your school like the new design of the school's website. So you mail questionnaires and use only the questionnaires that are returned. So it's self-selected because you're only using questions or questionnaire responses from people that chose to respond and return it to you. Systematic sample. This is when you use a rule to select the members of the population. So same type of an example, you want to determine which students like the new design of your student's website or your school's website. So you list the students alphabetically and then choose every sixth student would be example of systematic sampling. Stratified sampling. This is a sample in which the population is divided into smaller groups that share similar characteristics, and then a sample is randomly selected from each one of those groups. So one example of this would be if you, again, want to determine which students like the new design of your school's website, you randomly select 2 students from each classroom or homeroom or each first hour. Another example that will help make sense of this is if you split students into groups, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and then you randomly select students in each one of those grade levels. Cluster sample. This is when you divide a population into groups called clusters. And then all of the members in one or more clusters are then randomly selected. So let's say you want to find out whether booth holders at a convention were pleased with their booth location. You would divide the convention into centers of maybe 6 sections and then survey every booth holder in the 5th section or the 3rd or whatever section you randomly choose. Convenience sampling, a sample in which only members of a population are easy to reach are then selected. So if you are conducting a poll to determine how students feel about your school's new mascot, but then you only survey students in your homeroom, that would be a convenience sample. Another example would be interviewing just your friend group and then making a conclusion from that and not venturing out just because that was the convenient people. All right, let's talk about some bias that could happen when you're collecting data. A bias is an error that results in misrepresentation of a population. So an example would be an environmental magazine sends out a survey on recycling to its readers. The sample is biased because the readers of that magazine are most likely to have a strong opinion about recycling. That would create a bias in the data. Unbiased then would mean a sample represents the population you want information about. So if you randomly select a sample of students from each grade and ask them whether they would like to have a new gym or a new cafeteria, that would be an example of an unbiased sample. A biased sample would be a sample that over-representation represents or underrepresents part of a population. So let's go back to the environmental magazine sending out that survey on recycling to its readers. That would be biased again because those people that they're sending the survey out to are probably going to have a strong opinion about recycling because they read that magazine. This one's out of order, so this is actually on the next page, a biased question. This is a question that leads to inaccurate results. So an example would be, do you agree that we should take a field trip to the Science Museum this year? This is biased because it encourages a particular response. An unbiased would be broader and not leading you to one answer or the next. All right, here's some ways that we can sample through an experiment, observational study, a survey, or a simulation. We're almost done. You guys are doing good. I think. I can't see you right now, but I'm assuming that you're doing good. An experiment, a method that imposes a treatment on individuals in order to collect data on their response to a treatment. So the treatment can either be a medical treatment or it can be an action that affects a variable in an experiment. An example of this might be adding methanol to gasoline and then measuring the effect on fuel efficiency. Observational study, individuals are observed and variables are measured without controlling the individuals or the environment. So you're just observing. An example might be a researcher records whether people at a gas station use hand sanitizer. This study is used when it is difficult to control or isolate the variable being studied, or when it is unethical to subject people to a certain treatment or withhold them from a certain treatment. So then an observational study is put into place. A survey is an investigation of one or more characteristics of a population. An example is an online poll that asks people to select their favorite types of breakfast from a list or options. In a survey, every member of a sample is asked one or more questions. And last but not least, simulation. The use of a model to reproduce conditions of a situation or process so that the outcomes are closely matching the real world outcomes. You could use computer program to simulate flipping a coin so that you didn't have to do that 10,000 times. Simulations allow you to study situations that might be unethical or dangerous to do, so you can make a model that would be close to the same outcome. All right, turn to your student journal. Let's try a couple of these and we'll be done. Page 327 in your student journal. We're going to start by identifying types of samples. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to have you try it, and then I'll give you the answers. A restaurant, number one, a restaurant owner wants to know whether customers are satisfied with the service. So every fifth customer who exits the restaurant is surveyed. This would be an example of a systematic sample. There is a rule to select the members. Number two, an electric manufacturer wants to know if customers want to know the customer's responses towards a new released media player. Emails are sent out to customers who recently purchased the device to participate in an online survey at their convenience. This is a self-selected sample because the people are choosing to respond to the email. Number three, a survey is conducted to in a state to find out how many households own more than one vehicle. Households are divided into north, east, south, and west regions, and a sample is randomly surveyed in each one of those regions. This would be a stratified sample because it is divided into smaller groups and then randomly selected from each group. 4 and 5 want us to identify the type of sample and then explain why it is biased. Number 4, a manager of a company wants to determine whether the employees are satisfied with the lounge room. The manager surveys the employees who are in the lounge during break. This is a convenience sample because they're only giving surveys to people in the lounge. That creates a bias because they probably have a strong opinion about the lounge room because they're in it and they use it. Number 5, a news station asks its viewers to participate in an online poll about presidential candidates. This is self-selected because those people get to choose to do the online poll. It's biased because only the viewers that have a strong opinion are probably going to respond to the poll. Last 2, 6 and 7, identify the method of data collection the situation describes. So number 6, a researcher records whether shoppers at a grocery store buy magazines at the checkout aisle while waiting in line to check out. This is just an observational study because the researcher is just recording data. Number 7, a meteorologist uses a computer model to track trajectory of a hurricane. This is going to be a simulation because they're using a computer model. Nice job with 11.3. Hopefully this will help us move forward with the rest of chapter 11, and hopefully that vocab made sense for you.